So I made a video the other day predicting that if the Straits of Hormuz would close down, that the price of oil would double from approximately $70 a barrel to $140 a barrel. Now I checked today, and the ticker did go up on oil. The price did go up a bit. Not what I projected, but again, the Straits are not officially closed as of now, based on what I've read. But the news is coming so fast that it could change in the next 5 minutes. However, I also read Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who, disclaimer, I strongly dislike, was urging China to tell the Iranians to keep the straits open. Remember that a lot of this 20% of the oil production, 20% of the 20% of the world's oil production flows through the Straits of Hormuz, and a lot of that flows east. It flows to Asia, so this would affect them tremendously. Now, the question is, how would it affect us here in the U.S., right? So I'm going to take my best shot at this. Again, I am not an expert. I am just an enthusiast of geopolitics and history, so this is strictly my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. I encourage you guys to go do your research instead of listening from someone like me. However, I'll tell you what I think and what I know. So based on what I've read, the U.S. is the biggest importer and exporter of oil, or one of the biggest importers and exporters of oil in the world, right? We export something between 5 to 10 million barrels a day or something roughly around that. Now, you might ask, how can those two things simultaneously be true? And the answer is actually fairly simple. The viscosity of oil, of foreign oil, is better for the refineries here in the U.S., right? The oil that we drill here domestically is not, it's not adequate, if you will. It's not synergistic with all the refineries. So essentially, you would have to do a large investment to do a lot of retooling in all the domestic refineries. So you would have to find venture capitalists and investors, and it would cost a substantial amount of money to do. And then you have to consider who's going to want to go and invest in that, and you have to think about overhead and revenue and margins and things of that sort. So essentially, it's just cheaper to bring oil from overseas, from places like Saudi Arabia, and of course, just to sell the oil you have here overseas, since it's in demand, and as is. So how it's going to affect the market here? I mean, it's definitely going to have an effect. It always does. Anytime an OPEC nation goes to war, or there's a conflict, oil prices rise. A lot of that is speculative, naturally, but this time it didn't go. It didn't go as high as I predicted. But again, this is still an ongoing situation. Now, what could happen? Okay. Is if Iran gets more aggressive, they can start attacking Saudi oil fields. Right now, this is an overreach for them, simply because they don't have mechanized units, they don't have air cover. Their air defense is not good, as we've been watching on TV. Right, they've been decimated for the most part, but they do have a lot of infantry. So if by chance they could go ahead and somehow cross 500 miles of desert, or do covert operations or guerrilla warfare and attack Saudi oil fields and ports and supply chains and air distribution, and just cause havoc in the area, right? Just by supplying more arms to their proxy militant groups, such as the Houthis, which are right there in Yemen, or Hezbollah. But as far as I know, I think Hezbollah wants to stay out of this conflict as of now. So it's a long shot, but they do have a lot of strategic ways to disrupt and cause chaos for the U.S., for the West, and of course, in an all-out land war would be catastrophic for the U.S. in this case, and for Iran, of course, right? Because the U.S. is mostly just throw money at it and throw bombs at it. That's how we usually fight wars, but we never finish wars, unfortunately. So it seems like there's no ultimate strategy or objective to this. Again, because if you're looking for regime change, again, what does that entail? Is that going to look like de-Baathification in Iraq back in 2003, 2004? Because if that's the case, that's going to be absolutely catastrophic. Not to mention that the world power dynamics are changing as well, right? America, since launching this attack, has lost major credibility. Now you'll notice that For example, Vice President J.D. Vance now, he's changing the rhetoric. He's saying things like, we are not at war with Iran, we are at war with Iran's nuclear program. So they understand, or this administration understands that their base, or a portion of their base, is very unhappy with the events taking place. However, we still have to see how this is going to play out. So that's my assessment so far on the situation. If you guys have a different perspective, please share, drop a comment. Again, if someone's better informed than I am, or has more insight on, again, U.S. refineries, oil, the supply chain, just the intricacies of how all this works, again, please share your thoughts, your comments. I want to know. And yeah, stay tuned.